On the morning, London pretended to be Lagos, sunny against all expectations. Michael Adeyemi woke to a courier ringing his Peckham Flat buzzer like a drummer who had lost patience. He padded across the parquet, white t-shirt, gray joggers, and a prayer on his lips. The day was supposed to be simple. Shave, suit, vows forever. Delivery for Mr. Adeyemi. He signed, flipped a thick manila envelope in his hand, and noticed the center line was a dash, just a dash. Inside sat a USB stick, a Hilton Kensington key card sleeve, and a note written in neat block letters. Check your altar for cracks before you build on it. His throat dried. He thought of a Dejua, laugh like bottled sunshine, edges laid, mind sharper than the pins in her gelly. They met 2 summers ago at a black British business network mixer in Shoreditch. She corrected his Yoruba proverb. He debated her MBA thesis. They danced a burna in a bar with a bartender mispronounced pahan fruit. She'd been the smartest room he ever entered, and he wanted to live there. He looked at the clock. 7:18 a.m. The white wedding at St. John's, Hyde Park, was at noon. The Dorchester reception at 3. Aunties already warming up their O's and side eyes. He turned the USB over, as if it might reveal a gentler truth on the back. Tund, he said into his phone, voice set to the register menus when they're not ready to hear themselves. Bring your camera bag, and your discretion. Tund arrived by 7:45, breathing like he'd outrun a bus down Old Kent Road. Photographers don't do discretion, cousin. He grinned, then saw Michael's face and let the grin fall. Oh yeah, what happened? Michael plugged the USB into his laptop. A folder appeared. Hilton. 2 days to wedding. He clicked. First, a still, a corridor carpet in burgundy swirls, a door slightly ajar, then a video. It began with a laugh he knew. A Dejua's. The frame tipped, a sleeve, a hand, a kiss, then more. The other face resolved. A man he had known since they were boys jumping gutters in Surleer during summer holidays. Femi, his best man. Femi, whose mother called Michael's son and meant it. Femi, who had insisted on picking up the rings himself, because tradition demands your brother must carry your future. Femi, smiling into the lens of someone else's phone, arm around Michael just last night at a Canary Wharf lounge, calling him blood. Tund swore in a whisper. Michael pressed pause. The time-stamp glowed. 2 nights ago. He swallowed, counted to 5 to 50. He felt like a pane of glass that had survived too many winters and one loud door slam. He opened the Hilton sleeve. Room number, dates, initials scribbled by a receptionist. O.B. Oyen. Tund said, I think that's my friend from church. She's front desk. She knows everybody's business, but calls it stewardship. Michael laughed once, the kind of laugh that hurt his stomach. Find out if stewardship has CCTV. Tund hesitated. Mike, are you thinking what I think you're thinking? I'm thinking this wedding will still hold, Michael said, setting the laptop aside. But I will decide what it becomes. He went to the wardrobe and pulled the white tuxedo jacket he'd chosen because his mother had whispered, white for a new life. He set it on the chair and looked out at the unfaithfully blue London sky. Above the rooftops of Peckham, a plane cut a line too straight to be fate. He called his mentor next, Chioma Okafor, QC, who had taught him to breathe through evidence that sets your life on fire. Don't make any moves on adrenaline, she told him. Adrenaline is a liar. If you move like a barrister, only with documents, witnesses, and the judge's attention. Who's the judge? Michael asked. Whoever you make them, she replied. But do not let anger chair the bench. He closed his eyes and saw an altar. He opened them and began to plan. By 9:15, Tund had confirmation. Oyen saw them check in. Twice. Monday and Wednesday. Same room. She only realized who they were when she saw our wedding website. She sent the invoice, said God would forgive her because truth is tithe. Michael took the printouts. Cool paper against hot hands. Room charges, minibar, late checkout, and a note, Mr. F., a denier extended by 1 hour. The betrayal was obscene in its banality. 2 nights that could have been anything else. 2 nights they made into this. He could call it off. He could call his mother, who would call the prayer squad, who would call the world. He could ring a Dejwa, listen to a story rehearsed to sound unrehearsed, and hear himself choose to comfort a lie, because a perfect day had already been bought and paid for. He could walk into St. John's and say no, watch 1,000 flowers wilt. But Chioma's counsel hummed under his skin, move with documents, with witnesses, with the judge's attention. He phoned Yinka, the AV man he'd hired for the reception. We're adding a segment. I'll email you a file near the end of dinner. You won't play it without my signal, and you'll lock every other input once I start. That's heavy, boss, Yinka said, but my rigs don't stutter. He texted Uncle Segan. The MC will voice thunder build itself after. I may switch the order of speeches. If I tap the mic bass twice, dim lights to 40, fade music, no questions. Afterwards, keep the Andes dancing. He sent Tun to St. John's to check the projector. He called the Dorchester's events coordinator to verify the timing of the cake reveal, the band break, the father-daughter dance. He rehearsed a speech he had not yet written. At 10:03, his phone buzzed. Bride is leaving Croydon now. Came a message from the wedding planner, a woman who had organized Black Joy like a combat operation. She looked stunning. You will scream. Michael did not scream. He went to the small table by his door, where a ring box lay in a square of light. He picked it up and pressed his thumb into the cushion until a half-moon indented the velvet. He thought of the introduction ceremony 8 months earlier, the afternoon his mother met Adejwa's mother for the first time. A room in Thornton Heath packed with laughter, suya smoke, and loud prayer. He remembered the tray of fruits, the symbolic bride price in crisp pounds, the way Adejwa's father looked grateful and sad, like a man who had once misplaced a map and never stopped walking. After that day, Adejwa confided how pressure had followed her like uninvited relatives. Marry well, marry soon, marry stability. You are not a visa, Michael had told her then, smiling. You are a destination. Now, he wondered if she believed him, or she wanted to be a passenger in a safer car, even if the route corrupted the journey. At 10:40, he stood in the mirror and tied his bow tie. He watched his hands remember 1,000 small rituals, one loop, one fold, one pull. He saw a face he knew and another he was about to meet. He picked up the envelope, the printouts, and his composure. Let's go, he told Tund. We have a story to finish writing. Hyde Park, noon. Everything glittered. Aunties and Asoebi fanned themselves in unison, the fabric a diplomatic shade of gold that let both families claim they'd chosen it. Uncles argued about the best route from Peckham to Park Lane, and still agreed to take the worst one. The choir's harmonies rose like a banner over the pews. Strangers cried like cousins. Michael stood at the altar with Femi by his side. Femi looked splendid, midnight tux, fresh fade, cologne too earnest. He squeezed Michael's shoulder twice, a code they invented at 14 during a schoolyard fight, to say, I've got you. Michael nodded, and something in him recoiled at his own capacity for calm. He imagined sticking a hand into a snake's mouth to pull out a child because a child was him. Then the doors opened, and the church turned into a gasp. Adejwa stepped in, veil soft as a rumor, dressed like a whisper that had learned to speak. She moved down the aisle on her mother's arm. Her father had passed when she was 20 from a run of bad luck that looked like a system. Michael's mother, seated in the front pew, dabbed her eyes and whispered a psalm entirely of adjectives. Adejwa reached him. For a second she could have been a stranger, a beautiful woman arriving for a story he hadn't read. When she slipped her hand into his, her fingers trembled. He wanted to believe they trembled from love. The priest intoned words that had gathered meaning for centuries. Michael repeated them, mouth obedient, ears ringing with a different scripture. The sound of a laugh in a hotel room. When the priest asked, "Do you take?" Michael paused a fraction of a beat longer than etiquette allowed. Enough for God to notice, not enough for man. The priest's eyebrows lifted. The congregation breathed again. Vows were exchanged. Rings slid on the fingers with all the solemn choreography of certainty. By the power vested in me, the priest declared, I pronounce you husband and wife. Cheering erupted. Someone ululated. Someone else tried and failed. Outside, the hired roles glimmered like a rich man's answer. Cameras flashed. petals flew. A baby clapped because everyone else did. On Park Lane, the traffic parted, as if the city respected tradition. Just this once. In the rolls, Adejua leaned her head on Michael's shoulder. "You're quiet," she said, voice muffled against satin. "I am full," he replied. Full is silent. "Are you happy?" He turned his face to the window where London's glass and stone pretended at permanence. "Ask me after the speeches." She laughed, music he had memorized. "You and your speeches." She lifted his hand, kissed the knuckle with the ring. "We did it, babe." He looked at their fingers braided in his lap. 2 rings, 1 story. He smiled. It was not a lie. It was a strategy. When they entered the Dorchester ballroom, applause met them like a warm sea. The room looked like somebody's idea of heaven if heaven were funded by Andes who negotiated everything down 40%. The centerpieces were tall, but not showy. The stage bathed in soft amber. The DJ was a historian with turntables, moving from Fella to Thames like citizenship were a melody. They danced their first dance, a glide that felt like floating inside a memory. Adejua whispered things that made the guests cheer on cue. "Look at your shoulders," barrister shoulders. Michael smiled and let his grip say what his mouth could not. "I am holding you for the last time without the weight of the truth." Between courses, jollof rice that made an uncle accuse a caterer of Ghanaian influence, grilled lamb, a goosey soup that tasted of somebody's mother's patience. Michael checked with Yinka at the back of the hall. Yinka tapped his ear where the in-ear monitor Saturday. "I'm locked in. Your cue, your world." Femi avoided his eyes, but performed the duties of a best man, as if duty could rinse a conscience. He clinked glasses, laughed at the right volume, and folded his toast notes like a man praying over a script. There was a moment when Femi's phone vibrated and his face drained. Then he recovered. Then he could not find his recovery again. "Are you well?" Michael asked lightly at the edge of a picture with cousins they didn't know, but nodded at every Christmas. "Too much Red Bull," Femi said. "I'll switch to water." He tried the old shoulder squeeze once, twice. It felt like a ghost. The father-daughter dance invented its own sadness. Even in joy it remembered absences. Adejua danced with her mother instead, and the 2 women moved like a prayer that had to be written in the margins of a life. Michael's mother watched their faces and mouthed, "God keep you," as if a blessing could hold back a flood. Then Uncle Segan took the mic, voice velvet and thunder. "Ladies and gentlemen, the groom would like to say a word." Michael stepped onto the stage, straightened his lapel, and held the microphone like he was at the Old Bailey. The hall, all golden hush, looked back at him. "My people," he began, smiling, and waited for the room to smile back. They did, sweet, expectant. He let the silence thicken a hair. "Thank you for standing with us as we start a new life. They say every marriage stands on 3 pillars, truth, loyalty, and grace. My profession has taught me that when truth is weak, the whole structure is an elaborate tent." He paused. Somewhere a fork chimed against a plate. He tapped the base of the mic twice. Lights dimmed to 40. The music faded like obedience. On the rear screen, a title card appeared, plain white text on black. Exhibit A. Michael's voice remained gentle. "Today, before God and all our witnesses, we will speak the truth." The video cut in. Gas arrived before comprehension finished dressing itself. A laugh they all knew from that very afternoon. A corridor. A room. A man. Another laugh. A kiss. The man's face turned, and the audience recognized community. Femi's barber cheered for him every Saturday. A cousin had borrowed money from him last Easter. A choir member had asked him to be a godfather. The room shuddered. Adejua stood before she knew she had stood, veil slipping like a confession. "Michael," she said into the sound that was no sound at all. "Michael, please." He held up a hand as if fielding an objection. "We will allow statements after the evidence." The video ended with a still. Femi's hand on her back, ringless, careless. Michael breathed in the way he had been taught to, slowly enough to fool the heart. "Truth," he said, voice not raised, "is not cruelty. Truth is a surgeon. It cuts to heal. Loyalty, however, is oath. Broken oaths register in heaven and group chats. Grace, Grace is what we will find a way to live with after we bury today. He nodded to Yinka. Another slide appeared, bank statements. Someone in the 8th row moaned the way people do when they hear a number too high for prayer. Small transfers and larger than the kind of payment only shame explains. Femi to an account ending 5221, Adejua's. Notes that read just until after, "Babe, I've got you," he suspects nothing. Michael let the room read. He did not need to tell it what it already understood. He turned back to Adejua. "I loved you," he said, choosing the past tense not for punishment but accuracy. "I might still love the person I thought you were. I cannot love lies." He looked at Femi. "I forgave you 100 small things over 2 decades. You use that as tutoring." He took a breath. There will be no wedding night. No honeymoon. The honeymoon fund, however, will find new employment. He gestured to the side door. 2 teenage girls in navy blazers entered, flanked by their proud, startled mothers, ushered by Chioma, who had arrived like an argument the devil couldn't win. "Meet Tasha and Amina," he said, "future barristers who will not have to choose between textbooks and bus fare this term. The Adeyemi Fellowship begins today. It will be funded by the honey we no longer need." The room didn't know whether to clap. So it did. Something broke into tears in the 3rd row and never recovered. "As for tonight," Michael continued, "eat well. Dance without lies. Call your mother and tell her you love her. If you must gossip, do it kindly." He lifted a glass that a waiter's instinct had placed near him. "To Adejua and to Femi," he said, and the room froze. "May the lives you build now be honest. May you never mistake secrecy for intimacy again." He drank. In the silence that followed, a Yoruba Annie whispered, "Oja Baruku Amo Alanobe. A bad person cannot taste the sweetness of stew." Someone else hissed, "E pour me water make I no faint." Michael set the mic down, nodded to the DJ, and the music returned, not triumphant but resolute. The dance floor felt like a community does when it refuses to be embarrassed by other people's sins. He walked off the stage and out of the hall. He did not slam the door. He was not angry with the door. By dawn Sunday, the story had run to the Nigerian, Ghanaian, and Caribbean corners of London like a fire that knew all the shortcuts. Aunties forwarded the clip with "Don't watch," then watched again. Uncles pontificated in barbershops about loyalty, as if loyalty owed them money. Church WhatsApp groups lit up with declarations that included too much scripture and not enough self-awareness. Michael's phone rattled on the chest of drawers. His mother called, then his pastor, then a client who prefaced her message with 3 cry emojis and a booking request. He turned the phone face down, brewed coffee, and put a pot on for his mother, because she was at the door by 8 with plantain and worry. She entered without asking. Mothers have keys that aren't metal. "My son," she said, hugging him hard enough to argue with his ribs. I watched that video, and the devil isn't even creative anymore. He just repeats himself. He smiled because she needed him to. "I'm okay, Mummy." "You are not okay," she said, patting his cheek. "But you will be. God sees. That's his hobby." She set out the plantain, cut it with the diligence of a surgeon, and frowned. "I always liked that girl. Beautiful, respectful. But respect without truth is a masquerade. You know your mother's proverb. A masquerade that dances too close to the fire will learn heat." They ate in comfortable quiet. After breakfast, his Aunt Funk barged in with cloth for head tying and energy for war. Whereas Femi's mother, she demanded of no one. "She will meet me in the arena. We will fold our wrappers and do it the old way. No internet." Michael almost laughed. He loved his aunt the way you love thunder when it's outside your house. "Auntie, please, don't go to her." "Me? I won't go. I will glide." She squinted at him. "You handled it well. Not like those boys who go to Twitter to cry. You were a man, but promise me you will cry in private. That one is also manhood." After they left, he showered, shaved the anger off his jaw, and went for a walk through Burgess Park. He watched the boy teach his sister to ride a bike and thought about balance. The way you have to move forward is stay upright. The way stillness is a fall with manners. He sat on a bench and let London do its Sunday noises around him. Sirens at a distance, a West Indian couple laughing at a joke old as migration, a gaggle of teenage girls and Air Force Ones debating whose gel nail set was elite. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I'm sorry about your wedding. I thought you should know before you made vows you couldn't keep. I'm the one who sent the envelope. D. He stared at the initial. D. He typed, "Who are you, D?" "We're family," came back, and that's the problem. They met at a cafe in Elephant and Castle that served both perfect flat whites and hot puff puff, because London is greedy. The girl at the window table looked like somebody you'd trust with a secret and a machete. She stood as he approached, her braids catching light like they'd been waiting. "Dara," she said, extending a hand. Adejua's younger sister. Michael's jaw tightened, muscles recalling the altar like it were yesterday's backpack. "Why?" Dara didn't pretend not to understand. "Because I saw what you were about to enter, and I couldn't let my sister put another person in the room." "Another person?" She's been in love with Femi since uni. He was a chaos she thought meant passion, because stability looked boring on TV. But passion is only holy when it chooses you back. Dara's eyes were steady. After Dad died, Mum made survival into a religion. She told us to marry sensibly. Adejua heard secure a life. When she met you, she saw a man who wouldn't drop her, so she tried to put Femi away like a habit. He kept coming. He's persistent. Michael thought of all the times Femi had insisted on helping, the way Femi had inserted himself into decisions with a laugh, how he'd made loyalty into currency and spent freely. "I found messages," Dara continued, sliding her phone across the table. "Plans. Payments. A promise to stop after the wedding because he will get me pregnant quickly so no one will ask questions." Dara shrugged a single shoulder, the gesture of a woman who refused to carry other people's luggage. "She wanted to be good, Michael. I believe that. But wanting and doing aren't relatives. Why not come to me sooner? I wanted to, but loyalty, it confuses good people. It tells you silence is a tithe. By the time I decided, it was Wednesday. I went to Hilton. Oyen, God bless that woman, gave me the footage and cried about her job. I sent you the envelope at 6 a.m. on Saturday. I thought maybe you'd cancel. Instead, you turned it into," she shrugged, trying to find a word big enough, "into an altar where the truth finally got its own microphone." Michael looked at Dara then, properly, beyond the storyline she'd authored in his life. She was 23, maybe 24. Too young to be carrying a family on her back, and old enough to know no one else would. He softened. "Thank you," he said simply. She exhaled, something that had been parked between her ribs finally driving off. "She's ashamed, you know, not just because you exposed it, because you refused to make a scene small enough for her to survive." "I didn't do it to break her," he said, and found he meant it. "I did it so I wouldn't spend a lifetime fixing a lie." They drank in silence for a while. Then Dara said, "Femi will come for you." At his look, she smiled without mirth. Not with fists, with reputation. Men like him have a network of favors and a fragile ego. He'll spin a story where you're the villain, cold, controlling, too perfect to love. He'll go to people who already suspect strong men are hiding cruelty. He'll hang his shame on your hooks. Michael felt a coil of old war in his stomach unspool. "Then I'll build a house with no hooks." "How?" "By telling my story first and better, and by moving in a way that makes his version look like bad writing." Dara laughed then, sudden and surprised. "You're dramatic for a barrister." "I'm a barrister because I'm dramatic." Her laughing eased the room. On her way out, she pressed a small package into his palm. "From Mum," she said. "Bride price." She said to return it quietly. She said to tell you she's embarrassed but relieved. He nodded, felt the weight of coins and the heavier weight of intention. "Tell her thank you, and tell her I know. Life makes villains of good women sometimes." As they parted at the door, Dara turned back. "One more thing," she said. "Femi wasn't only sleeping with Adejua." She waited. "He has a fiancée, Ama, Ghanaian. She's due in 3 months. He told Adejua he was ending it. He told Ama the same. He's a man walking across a river on 2 canoes. Michael blinked the way you do when your eyes try to protect your heart. And when he reaches the middle, he will learn water, Dara said and left. On Tuesday, Michael met Femi at a riverside bar in Southwark, a spot where men wore suits like armor and laughter like camouflage. The Thames moved in its old, indifferent way. Skyscrapers and cranes tried to out-argue each other. "Best man," Femi said, sliding into the chair opposite. He wore grief like a borrowed jacket. "Good cut, wrong fit. I'm sorry." "For what?" Michael asked low, benign. "The act of exposure?" Femi's mouth made the shape of a smile, and then remembered it had work to do. "For both. Look, Mike, we messed up, but do you know how long I've been there for you? Since that night we got chased from the cinema in year 9. Since your dad lost the taxi's contract, and we ate into me for a month. Since loyalty," Michael interrupted softly, "is not a debt that pays for betrayal." Femi's eyes hardened. "You always think in court words, but this is life. Life is the only court that matters." A server came, set down water neither of them touched. Femi leaned in. "You embarrassed my mother. You ruined my name." "I revealed your actions," Michael said. "The ruin traveled on its own passport." Femi dropped his voice. "You think your name is stainless? My guy, watch the blogs. Your uncles, the friends who only like you because you win cases. They're already saying you're cruel. A real man forgives in private. A real husband covers his wife." "Covering is a blanket," Michael replied. "Smothering is a crime." Femi laughed, nasty now. "You think you're the only storyteller? I've got a turn too. People will believe me because your perfection annoys them. You're neat. Neat men are suspect." Michael wanted to rage. Instead, he reached into his satchel and placed a document on the table, sliding it across with 2 fingers. "This is a letter to your compliance department," he said. "It includes all the receipts and the timeline of how you access funds set aside for Stag Night and move them into your personal account to pay for 2 nights at the Hilton. Before you panic, read the last paragraph." Femi scanned, jaw working. At the end, his mouth opened. You're not sending it." "I'm not," Michael said. "Yet." Femi's eyes lifted, calculating old and fast. "What do you want?" "I want you to stop." He held Femi's gaze until the other man had to look away, then return, then flinch again. "Stop lying to Alma. Stop spinning stories about me. Stop calling Adeju at 2 a.m. and offering her a different version of the same poison. Stop using friendship as rent for space in other people's lives." Femi licked his bottom lip. "And if I don't?" "Then I will submit the letter," Michael said mildly. "And because I am not dramatic without preparation, I already met with a member of your board's audit committee to explain that a letter might arrive. I did not show them the letter. I showed them the transcript of this conversation." Femi sat back. "You recorded me." "I recorded us," Michael said, tapping his phone. "Laws allow one-party consent in some scenarios. But relax. I'm not using it in court. I'm using it to discipline your imagination." Silence gathered in folds. On the river, a tourist boat cut applause out of the air with its own noise. Femi's shoulders slumped. He looked like a boy at the end of punishment. I don't know why I do this," he said finally, and the honesty was surprise he didn't deserve. "I think I like being wanted. I think I hate watching other men get what I think I earned." "Then earn it," Michael replied. "Earn a life you don't have to narrate away." Femi stood, nodded like a man who had met his reflection, and didn't enjoy the conversation. "We're done then." "We were done when you looked at my bride like a problem you could solve with your hands," Michael said quietly. "This is the admin." After Femi left, Michael watched the river a while longer. He thought of Alma and a child who deserved a father who didn't confuse love with conquest. He thought of Adejua and a woman who deserved to learn the difference between passion and erosion. That evening, he returned the bride price in a simple envelope to Adejua's mother in Thornton Heath. They sat at a small table with a chipped edge and too much memory. The older woman crumpled into apologies, so thick they obscured her face. "Don't," Michael said, not unkindly. "This is all of us. We build girls with instructions we didn't test. We raise boys like kings without kingdoms and then watch them raid villages. She cried anyway. When he rose to leave, she pressed a hand on his arm. "Thank you for not destroying her," she said. "I know you could have arranged more." He smiled, tired to marrow. "I arranged just enough of the truth to have witnesses.